Architect Gurpreet, my question to you is, so you have done a lot of, new airports, greenfield airports and brownfield airport expansions as well. So what do you think are the key guiding principles for the development of brownfield airports or, the considerations that have to be, taken into account before an airport goes into expansion?
Working in a brownfield airport is a very challenging experience, and I think Srilata, ma'am, is quite aware of it. She has extensively worked in Delhi airport, Chennai, and working with Srilata, ma'am, in Delhi also. We looked at that. When you are designing, it's not about design; it is also about the passenger experience. While implementing a design at a brownfield facility is a nightmare, as Michael has talked about, because you have to ensure that the passengers are disturbed the least. I would not say we can make it 100% safe for them, but let's try to create an experience where disruption is kept to the minimum. And generally the city side is quite limited, so in a limited space one has to ensure that one is able to run the existing facility, and at the same time one is able to augment the new facility. And then the whole idea of how the both of them come together, integration of the existing and the new is a real challenge, where the interface of both the terminals come together. So that is I feel is a major challenge. And the other major challenge is that the existing terminals flavor and the new facilities flavor also need to come together, so that you don't you are getting into one terminal and coming back from another, and you feel that heaven and hell are happening together. So that transition in terms of experience is also a key. And then the other thing is that technological integration in both the facilities also have to come together. So in all, I think working in a brownfield terminal is a major challenge, and I'm still learning how to probably look at it, that I create least disturbance to the passengers. But in India, this is something that we need to think very carefully, because as the numbers are increasing, this would be a problem that we need to grapple very carefully.
Brownfield airport, what is recommended is to have the right airport master plan from the beginning that takes under consideration to be separate satellite buildings or separate terminals that expand the capacity, and not to do this expansion within the same terminals. That isolate the construction and minimize any operational impact. And last but not least, since you fence the construction, it's much easier to transfer the workers without permits, because the logistical support for all the contractor and the workers to come in an operational environment, it's huge and create delays. This is from my experience. So airport master plan is really crucial to define the steps of the expansion per million pax well in the beginning.
I very much agree to what all points Gurpreet has mentioned and also what Michael has said. Only two things I would like to say. Where the master plan, like he has rightly mentioned, and master plan is a guiding book. So for any one particular area, terminal, there are some areas which are already kept for allocated for future expansion or future uses. So before we embark on these brownfield expansions, one, we need to closely look into those areas. Have we consumed really all of them? That is one. Second is there's something called a sweating of asset. Sweating is what is the maximum we can pull out of that space. This is a very big brainstorming cap. Many would have lots of resistance because they're already used to that kind of space and those kind of flows. But little tweaking we do, we change this place there and create routes and all. Still we can do, which is you're trying to sweat that asset before we go for brownfield. But it's a
And then comes
nightmare.
the technology in the sweating the asset. Then comes the technology there.
I
Thanks.
agree. IT plays a major role there. I agree. So it goes all like hand in hand. Like Gurpreet has mentioned, it should be integrated. Like all the people with their thinking caps, when they come together, you can come with a solution. But ideally speaking, having a separate premises or a separate area is the best way to do it. Within the terminal is big nightmare, very big nightmare, especially with the passengers and signages and barricades and changed flows. And every day there would be one story.
True.
I also think, adding on that, as the technology is also changing so fast and rapidly, the existing terminals, how they, would be able to respond to that, because, as we go forward, the check-in processes are becoming quicker. So, the whole idea of maybe the whole room need to increase. So the whole process in terms of planning of the brownfield facilities which are already there would also be changing. So now, we are getting up with this new request from the aviation clients where they want to remodel the existing facility. So that would also be a big challenge to accomplish.
Can you just touch upon what is Airport 4.0 and how is this driving modernization in Indian airports?
I think I would give my version of it, but I think Michael would be the right person because Airport 2 was earlier like it was all like self baggage or drop counters. It's all self service kind of thing. Now Airport 4.0 is a notch higher. It's all AI driven, and then it's very futuristic, and then there's lots of 5G and IoT. It's all technologically driven. And the ultimate, as I told you in my presentation also, the mantra is enhanced passenger experience. So whatever is happening, ultimately the passenger has to be happy. So the human touch which is there is something which is a very a strong point which is coming in Airport 4.0. Like while we are talking of technology, all the ultimate things, it is also the personal and one-to-one touch from that airport environment to the passenger. According to me, that is Airport 4.0.
My insight is for me, the envision for Airport 450 is to be able to go to the airplane without any security check. This will be my vision for me, or the security check to be so seamless without, let's say, creating all this discomfort everybody is facing before going inside an aircraft. So I know technology is neutral, customer experience is the key. However, customer experience is more or less the perception. And even if the temperature of an airport terminal is not right, it creates discomfort. So let's look a little bit of the look and feel of a modern terminal, which is not only technology, it also is aesthetically, I would say, nice, that attracts the customers and brings more and more and more customers, not only as a passenger, but also as a tourist attraction. This is what main airports are doing, like Changi or Munich. They're creating the airport city that attracts not only passengers, but also it's an attraction for all the people of the city to come to see and enjoy themselves like a fun park in the airport. I think this is for me the future airport and not only technology.
So how do you think public-private partnership model is emerging as a key funding model in airport expansions in India?
Yes, so public-private partnerships are like increasingly emerging as the key funding and implementation model for airport expansion, especially brownfield settings. Because the main reason here being they nicely blend this public sector oversight with private capital and brings in technical expertise and global operational efficiency. So what happens under the PPP models, governments retain their ownership and regulatory control, while the private partners, they bring in their investment, innovation, as well as risk sharing mechanisms, that actually accelerates the delivery of capacity upgrades, modern facilities, and improve service standards, which we actually aim for in a brownfield setting. So that's one thing. So there was one question in the panel regarding is there is any specific set of criteria for which an like government-owned airport can be transformed into a PPP. So there is no such thing, but usually when these capacity constraints, investment requirements, as well as commercial potential, they exceed what Airport Authority of India can sustainably deliver under the public budget model. Usually, private participation comes in to add value without compromising the public interest. So this is a uniform decision taken and assessed jointly by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, Airport Authority of India itself, Niti Aayog, and the PPP cell in the Department of Economic Affairs. So it's a collective decision, and to guide this decision, there are certain toolkits available developed by multilateral development institutions like the World Bank and ADB, which provides effective sets of toolkits to assess the PPP applicability of these brownfield expansion projects.
Yeah, I would just like to add that this PPP is coming in a big way in our country, since the airport authorities probably so much growth is there that one operator is just not possible. So this whole idea of 1+1 is also coming, where there would be an integration of one airport facility which has economical sense, plus one smaller airport, so hub and spoke model, where two facilities would be given to one participant. So these kind of opportunities are really coming in India, where one can look at even some facilities which can probably make commercial sense, and other can be a probability where you can make sense through parking of aircrafts, or maybe maintenance facilities and ancillary facilities related to aviation. So this is a big thing that is coming up now in the country.
So I think we were dealing, I mean, you were speaking about AI and the kind of the volume of data that can be stored and all of that. So when we speak of data, and every day when we use data, it becomes humongous. So airport operations can rely on vast amounts of data from several sources. So how do you think integrating information into a cohesive digital ecosystem can sometimes turn out to be complex? So how can this challenge be overcome?
You touch a very, very critical point, the integration. And traditionally, for all this data, there is a machine, a server that is called information broker that connects with all these systems in order to aggregate this data. This is the biggest challenge when you open either a brownfield or a greenfield airport. The correct communication of these interfaces. This is one of the huge risks in airport openings, and there were several failures of airports due to the lack of integration, like the opening of Kuala Lumpur Airport in, I think, 2002, like the opening of the Berlin Airport, like the disaster of Heathrow New Terminal in 2012 because of the lack of integration between BHS and the airport operational system. So yes, this is the most critical element. And in order to deal with this, you need a master system integrator company specialized in defining the interfaces and do the right testing. This is the way all the brownfield airports or the greenfield airports should do. This is what I'm doing now in my role as a master system integrator lead for Athens Airport. This is what I have done in the past. This is the only way to define a master system integrator company to do the right dimensioning, specifications, testing and commissioning of the interfaces.
What he said is absolutely right. MSI, Master System Integrator, they should come into the project as early as possible.
As early as possible. Yes, thank you. This is what I'm telling to all airports that are contacting me.
It's not that this awakening comes to them after some time. It should be right from day one while the org chart is being made.
Even during the planning phase, this is even more critical before the construction. And yeah, if you need any support for the Indian airport, more happy to help for this very critical but often neglected part of the construction. So yes, this is very critical, and thank you for touching this point.
A lot of design elements that you showed throughout your presentation. So when we speak about airport construction and modernization, what material innovations are redefining these expansions in India and globally as well?
See, India was a global. India, in terms of aviation, is a pretty new market. Let's say the whole boom has started in the last 20 years. So there was a feeling of making our terminals which would be more global initially. Large span structures. More in terms of lacquer glass, steel. So the materials that you generally see in the West was something that we were trying to imbibe. And the classic examples are Bombay and Delhi. And but with change of these facilities, now one is looking at very local flavors, and one wishes that with new materials, one is able to innovate in a way that you are able to somehow create flavor. I showed you a picture where we were able to recreate a jali pattern. So those kind of ideas in different incarnations are coming back in the country, where one is trying to use the new materials but with some kind of a local flavor or touch. For example, you can't create a stone jalis, that would take awesome amount of time. So GFRC jalis are coming in. So idea is to have materials which are robust, sustainable, but at the same time they can bring back some of the cultural richness that India has inside our terminals, I believe.
Placemaking is a very important aspect in a design. So any building which is coming in that place should have an ethos or a flavor of that place. So the local materials which are available, example, I'm talking of very natural materials, whether it could be wood, bamboo, or these things, with certain kind of liners or additives, value additions to that material, they become more, the longevity will be more, they'll be more sustainable and green materials. Like now, whenever we are making any building, it should not be a burden for Mother Earth. It should be a sustainable one. So these small additions which we do to these materials, I think the value or the longevity will be more. This is something like there's lots of research which is being done in many research organizations, and many new materials are coming up, like engineered wood, engineered cane, then cork. These are many, like some recyclable materials, even in the bricks, even in plasters, even in the boards. Like now there is lots of research which is happening, and especially either for the outdoor or the indoor, there are new materials which are coming up in the market. So the architect should pick the right material. Like the doctor prescribes the medicine for a particular ailment or gives a remedy, the architect should choose the right material from the palette which goes into the system.
What are the key or critical challenges, and which are very, very difficult in today's world? And how architects like you, or consultants or technology consultants like Michael, how are you mitigating this and still going ahead with the expansions?
May I start from
Yeah, sure.
from Brownfield Airport? What I'm facing is that they designing about systems for the expansion, but they don't have take under consideration the capacity of the existing systems, if it is capable or competent to accommodate the expansion requirements. This is something very often neglected, and that leads to huge gaps system-wise and create a lot of details. This is something I have faced in several projects. So that means you should do feasibility studies even before planning for an expansion to see if the existing systems can accommodate the extra capacity. This is one risk, and the way to mitigate it is through feasibility studies during the design of the expansion, and often neglected.
From my perspective, I think, especially talking about India, what I have seen that there has been a transition in terms of the square footages. We used to design 20,000, now we are designing 200,000, and probably we'll go, so on. So there is a huge number of expansion that is coming up in the country. So it becomes very important that, we need to create our facilities which are process oriented, simple in terms of material palette, in terms of the thought process. So you can think the most complicated design or the most complicated process that one can think of, but eventually the terminal has to work, and it has to be so simple and clean that even a small child can understand and navigate the whole ecosystem. So the I would say, like Michael has talked about, some of the terms even I can't understand. It's so complicated. Things are not that simple. But to the person who's looking from outside, the actual user, for him, the whole process needs to be simple and he should have a pleasant experience. That's what should be the logic behind the whole exercise.
Yeah, airport passenger journey is all process driven. Like you have one process after another one, and a passenger during the screening time, the stress levels are all time high. Then it comes down, and towards the boarding gate, so it's normal. So when you are looking into the passenger experience, the psychology of the passenger matters a lot. At what place we are introducing what. So a designer and architect should be very sensible and sensitive to this passenger journey. So at the entry level, at the check-in level, at the screening level, the stress levels are absolutely high, even for a frequent traveler. When it comes to screening, to bring out all those stuff and put it in the screening machine, still there is an amount of stress. It's a graph. It's an worldwide accepted theory. So while you're designing the spaces, the environment which is around that journey is the key. When you're talking of modernity, the materials and other things, how we are applying it to the person who is actually undergoing that journey is the key. So if you ask me, the architect should be sensible and sensitive to this.
Okay. So, okay, in continuation with this, there's one question from the audience. So, in a live brownfield airport environment, what existing surfaces are the most challenging to refurbish without disrupting operations, and what surface preparation performance factors are most critical to meeting safety requirements and project timelines?
Should I start? I think for me, the most critical service that needs to be, who is disrupted and needs to be stable is security. This is the challenge in a brownfield airport, and this is the service that the operator has to ensure that the security remains on the highest level during construction.
Yeah. To add on to it, in a brownfield airport, yes, security definitely matters. The amenities, especially the water, the washrooms, and the passenger facilities which are there. So we need to have a seamless flow. So like they were in the earlier scenario, in the new intermittent scenario or during the construction, these main facilities should not be disrupted. And we have our land side, air side boundaries. So the way the land side, air side boundary is demarcated is it is very crucial for an brownfield airport expansion. So where you're going to give the barricade, where is the entry of material happening, where is the entry of whatever. There are so many ways, things which go in and out during construction. So the way this is mapped and laid out is very important.
Okay.
Yeah. And also one thing from the policy perspective, like when expansion of brownfield airport projects come into like involve a lot of diverse nature of stakeholders. So contingency planning becomes an integral part of it, like having clear contingency manuals and mitigation obligations in the concessionaire agreements itself that helps in reduction of disputes and speeds up the decision-making process. Like we all know, most of our airports in India are operating on concessionaire model under PPP. So having clearly defined contingency plans and manuals regarding the same integrated in the agreement itself helps in speeding up the processes.
So one question that I would like to ask is, as far as brownfield airport expansions are concerned in India, what are the mandates, like regulations that are stipulated by the government in India, and are we adhering to any global standards as?
Yeah, so like Airport Authority of India and DGCA has already laid out clear guidelines regarding this, and the National Civil Aviation Policy also provides effective framework regarding the same. And international guidelines in terms of the IATA and ICAO guidelines are always there as a reference point, which helps in decision making and in speeding up processes.
See, as far as in terms of design and plan is concerned, one follows all the principles laid down in IATA, and we are following ADRM as well. But there are certain key policies which I feel need to need to be looked at very carefully, because when we design terminals, what we see is that we design, and once the terminal is executed, it is almost saturated. So this is a big problem that we are facing in terms of policy framework, that probably the intent of how the terminals are being positioned, we need to ensure that the LOS is designed in such a way that there is a decent amount of time once the terminal are constructed and once they are saturated. So this is a real time challenge that I am facing.
The rules and regulations are the same for a greenfield and a brownfield, where the codes and compliances are there. Um, there's no what to say. There's no escape from it. It is the same. In fact, brownfield is more. There are more number of approvals and signing authorities, and you have to take many stakeholders into consensus. It's a bigger problem and a bigger challenge. Otherwise, there are no. We can't say this is less and this is more. Brownfield has got more to do, more regulations, and everywhere we need to have. You have the checklist. You need to take sign off from everyone. Nothing you can't bypass anything. It's the same. Any ministry or any stakeholder, anything what we have in greenfield is the same. We are not excluding anybody. It's the same. And in brownfield it's more. From my experience, I can say that.
Okay. So I think Arka mentioned about contingency planning. So what one is the security, I mean, the safety of workers and people who are involved in the expansion. What other things should be there in the contingency planning while the actual brownfield airport expansion is going?
You should be prepared for surprises. Things are there in the drawings, things are there, but there's something comes up on the site. You should be prepared for the surprises. That's one thing in brownfield. Contingency in the sense, yes, suddenly there is a new requirement which comes from the site and from passenger flows. There are like you should be prepared for all these things in a climate. Climate is one thing, and we can't name one. You should be prepared. I can only say you should be prepared for surprises.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything from Gurpreet's sides?
I think sometimes in brownfield, as Michael mentioned, it's very nice to have a proper master plan, but in some of the cases, and in most of the cases in India, in the smaller tier two and tier three facilities, the city side is very, very limited. And that's where when in the brownfield, you need to augment the facilities becomes a becomes a big, very big challenge. And I think a classic example is Chennai. People who have moved towards Chennai, they would see that the highway and the terminals are probably not even 100 meters apart. So, and the terminal are terminal 1, 2, 3, 4 are all sitting one adjacent to the other. So making of the facility and ensuring that the passenger is able to reach to his terminal when this whole mess is happening it's a, believe me, it's very tricky and very difficult, and there are contingencies on daily basis in these kind of design development, because one is not able to comprehend or or one is able to understand what kind of problems one will face on daily basis. So in these facilities, I think what Michael also pointed out was that how probably we can look at possibility of multidisciplinary approach, where we kind of bring all these specialists together at a very early stage, so that once we actually go on site and hit the ground, most of these things are thought of. And one classic example, and I think the change that is happening, is the whole idea of digital twin, which is helping us in terms of mitigating these kind of problems or limiting them to some extent.
Yeah, another key aspect in contingency plan always comes in the landslide circulation as well, because once a brownfield expansion project kick in, there is a lot of traffic rerouting as well as the circulation system of the passengers as well as the incoming and outgoing traffic changes a lot. So for any kind of emergency response protocols to get activated while for VVIP movements and such activities, these contingency plans at the early stage of the project comes very handy.
To add on, one is parking, like Gurpreet has already mentioned, and also the other two speakers. Land side, especially parking and transit passengers, transfers and transit, when they have to maneuver, when they have to go around these areas, it becomes a challenge because they are new to that scenario, because they would have seen the terminal in another form, but it's a big surprise for them. So these transfers and transits is something which should be looked into in detail, and parking also, landside parking.
Thank all my speakers.